I knew that food is information, but so is exercise and so is stress, like all of these things. I talked earlier how I went through a very stressful event and boom, got thrown into early menopause, right? So all of the things we do are information. So what are we doing that's telling our body to reduce inflammation, balance our hormones, and what's telling it the opposite thing? So I'm teaching this course called Overcoming Weight Loss Resistance. One of the things in there was teaching on labs, and one of the labs was a food sensitivity test. So because I was doing that, I saw all of these food sensitivity test results. And this was really telling if your gut is more permeable, food's getting into circulation where it shouldn't be, and triggering an inflammatory response, a delayed immune response. And, I saw the same things all the time. And gluten was a different type of test, but gluten causes this problem. It makes your gut leakier. It also makes you more inflamed. It also can make you more insulin resistant.
Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast, helping empower women to embrace their body and soul's full potential. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, and after 22 years of working with patients, I found the answers to our health struggles are much deeper than most people realize. To help explore this, I'm interviewing colleagues and other wellness experts to get to the root cause so women can realize their true beauty and be informed decision makers for themselves and their loved ones. Fad diets come and go, but what are the healthy eating trends we really need to pay attention to? The ones that work? To discuss this, I asked today's guest to come on the podcast. JJ Virgin is a triple board-certified nutrition expert and fitness Hall of Famer. She was co-host on TLC's Freaky Eaters, the on-camera nutritionist for weight loss challengers on Dr. Phil for 2 years, and she's had numerous appearances on PBS, Dr. Oz, Rachel Ray, Access Hollywood, and The Today Show. JJ is the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers, including The Virgin Diet, and is a passionate advocate of eating and exercising smarter. Today, we talk about busting myths about food and diets and how to address inflammation, including top trigger foods to watch out for. This and much more on today's episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast. It's amazing the impact that food has on us. And we are in so many ways ruled by food. We can't just go without food too. we have to have food. And yet the fast food nation that we live in, there's so many things that we can go wrong, go astray with our diet.
Well, even if you're not doing like I think for all of us listening here, we're probably not driving through McDonald's. I'm just willing to make a guess that we probably aren't. And we're probably going to the store and trying to make those great choices. The challenge is you can go to the store and try to make those great choices and you'll buy something that says no sugar added, right? And it's got like green, it's got little plants and it looks so good. And you think you're doing a great thing. And yet it may have more sugar than what you do if you just drank a soda, right? Because of them using fruit juice concentrates to sweeten it. So that's the crazy thing right now is so much that's out there that looks like it's health foods are actually hurting us. Like a lot of these, healthy foods that have all these dirty processed oils in them, or they sneak in gluten and dairy and some of the food intolerance foods. And the challenge with all these things is they inflame us. And they stress our body out. And boy, especially if you're going into a time where you're trying to achieve hormone balance, you can't achieve hormone balance with an inflamed system.
No, you can't. And so let's talk about some of those big triggers. I mean, I think I know what your number one is.
Well, it's, I would say I have like 3 that are the trifecta. And, the story is, way back when I used to teach this course to doctors, and I went around, I think I taught it like 10 times. It was called Overcoming Weight Loss Resistance. I have been obsessed with what causes you to gain weight or get in the way of you losing weight since my early 20s when I was in graduate school. And all the talk was, here I am in graduate school, and what you were taught was if you wanted to have your client lose a pound a week, you created a 500 calorie a day deficit. And if it was 2 pounds, you created a 1,000 calorie a day deficit because your body's a bank account. And you know what drove me crazy, Trevor, was how much my clients were cheating. Or so I thought, right? Because I was going, this isn't working. And I kept going kind of like, this is so weird. They'd pay me all this money to cheat. And then I took some women away for a week to a retreat and I got to control everything. And wow, I had the same effects. Like some people lost, some people gained, some people stayed the same. And that's when I knew our body wasn't a bank account. It was a chemistry lab. And so I became obsessed with this because I knew that food is information, but so is exercise and so is stress. Like all of these things. I talked earlier how I went through a very stressful event and boom, got thrown into early menopause, right? So all of the things we do are information. So what are we doing that's telling our body to reduce inflammation, balance our hormones, and what's telling it the opposite thing? So I'm teaching this course called Overcoming Weight Loss Resistance. One of the things in there was teaching on labs, and one of the labs was a food sensitivity test. So because I was doing that, I saw all of these food sensitivity test results. And this was really telling if your gut is more permeable, food's getting into circulation where it shouldn't be, and triggering an inflammatory response, a delayed immune response. And, you know, I saw the same things all the time. And gluten was a different type of test, but gluten causes this problem. It makes your gut leakier. It also makes you more inflamed. It also can make you more insulin resistant. None of those things are things you want to be doing if you're trying to have good hormone balance. But the top foods were always dairy and eggs. Eggs were such a shocker to me because I think pastured eggs are like one of these great, it's like nature's little perfect food, but we have really messed up nature's perfect food. Let's be honest. Like we've just trashed it. And then the next level were corn, soy, and peanuts. And I was like, this is so wild because in the nutrition world, we have an elimination diet and those weren't the foods on the elimination diet. The elimination diet was like citrus and oranges and nuts, and I wasn't seeing those anywhere. And so I decided that I was just going to start pulling these foods out, gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, and see what would happen instead of bothering to do the test because the test took 3 weeks to come back. And what I found was that people were getting crazy, amazing results, and they were able to connect the dots between what they were eating and how they felt. The one thing that I didn't pull out at that time was sugar, because the reality is I don't really like sugar. I've never been a big sugar person, so it didn't dawn on me, right? But what I discovered was because I was pulling out those other foods, but not sugar, you know what people were eating?
What?
Sugar. Because it didn't, you know, I remember someone coming in and going, I found these amazing gluten-free brownies. I'm like, what? You know, what are you doing? So, and I started to look at it and went, well, sugar, when you really look at it, like if you're going to look at one thing and go, all right, I'm going to do one thing for my diet. And I always like to add before I take away. So I'd say, hey, add non-starchy veggies first. But if I was going to swap one thing, if you can lower your sugar impact, the impact overall is dramatic. But the problem is people have no idea where sugar is sneaking in. And so I start to notice, okay, if I'm pulling these things out, now I know to give great swaps for each of them. Like if you're going to pull out dairy, oh my gosh, there's so many great swaps for dairy now. It's easy, right? I mean, who would do cow's milk now when you can have oat milk or coconut milk or any of these other choices? But for sugar actually creates a lot of the problems. It makes your gut leakier. Talk about aging. It's the most aging substance we can have. You know, people are trying to do all these things for their skin, laser, plastic surgery, and they're eating sugar. I'm like, forget it. You cannot overcome that. So sugar became the other thing that I had to obviously pull out of people's diets because, again, it's going to make your gut leakier too. It's going to allow for a lot of these food intolerances. But you know, if you're trying to balance your hormones, the first thing you've got to do is get rid of the inflammation. And one of the biggest causes of inflammation is all the sugar sneaking into our diet. And again, it sneaks in the silliest ways because it's not like we're eating table sugar. You know, when I was doing the sugar impact diet, I went out and tried to find sugar cubes because I thought they'd be a really cool like thing to show when I was doing TV segments. I couldn't find them. We don't use them anymore. And I remember like my grandparents growing up had sugar cubes, right? They put in their coffee. You can't find them anymore, but we're doing like something like over 150 pounds a person of sugar per person per year because it's in that green drink that you're drinking, trying to be healthy, that's got apple juice concentrate and pineapple juice and all that garbage. And it's just in everything because it is a drug. So the initial question, I'm like, gluten, dairy, and sugar kind of are my trifecta three, because they are all have a drug-like effect on your brain. They're all super addictive, and they're all what the food companies use so that we keep coming back for more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with alternatives to sugar, how do you help people with that? Because I think a lot of times people think, okay, well, I'm not going to have sugar. So then there's honey and there's maple syrup and there's fructose and there's, fruit and fruit juice and all these things.
I know. When I wrote the Virgin Diet, the biggest question I got asked after it was like, can I just have cheese, please? After that one, it was sugar. And people were kind of in two camps. They were either confused, oh, I'm just going to have honey. It's all natural. I'm like, well, all sugar is natural except for artificial sugar, which shouldn't even be here. Like, it's the worst of the worst. But, there was that confusion of, oh, it's raw. It's maple syrup, right? The challenge is, all carbohydrates except for fiber turn to sugar when you eat them, but you want to make sure that you're making them slowly from the legumes or the quinoa or the squash that you're eating, not mainlining it from things like maple syrup and honey and those types of things. So that was the first thing. Or they were just like, I can't quit it. Like, I cannot give up this. And so one of the things I set out to do is like, all right, now I'm adopted. My adopted mom has a major sweet tooth. I literally was raised, breakfast was Pop-Tarts or Captain Crunch or Cocoa Puffs. And we had dessert every single night after dinner. And I was sent dessert in my lunch every day. So I developed a sweet tooth that I got rid of. My mom has a sweet tooth. And so I was really genetically, I was like, how do you break a sweet tooth? Because, you can't white knuckle these things. I do not believe in willpower. We were raised hardwired really to seek out sugar and fat so we could survive, right? In the summer, if you think about it, when the days are longer and we sleep less and therefore we are more insulin resistant, so we're better at storing fat, we had all that fruit so we could gorge on fruit, store fat. So during the winter, when days are shorter, we could basically survive off our stored body fat and along with a little bit of food, but we were more insulin sensitive. So how can we how can I get people past this sweet tooth? And it's actually something that I've shown that you can do in 2 weeks or less. And it really first starts by making sure that you are eating what I call macro balanced plates, because one of the big challenges I see with people is they're eating a higher carb, and again, all carbs turn to sugar, but a higher mainlining carb diet. And they're eating all throughout the day. And every time you eat, you're going to raise blood sugar and you're going to raise insulin to bring the blood sugar down. Now, insulin moves slowly, blood sugar moves quickly. And so if you're doing that and you eat, let's say, a muffin and a latte for breakfast, and then 2 to 3 hours later, you have a little snack. Maybe you have a fat-free yogurt with the fruit on the bottom. That thing has about 20 grams of sugar in it. And you do this every couple hours. Insulin never comes back down. It always stays up. And if insulin's high, you lock the doors to your fat cells. You cannot burn stored fat for fuel. And so you basically turn yourself into a sugar burner, always reliant on something else coming in every couple hours. And you're this if you can't lose weight off your waist and you can't go more than a couple hours without eating. Like, anyone who's forgotten to eat is a fat burner. That's my thing. It's like, if you go, oh shoot, I forgot to eat lunch. Awesome. You're a fat burner. You're a sugar burner if you have to do the blood test in the morning. You're like, I don't know if I can make it. That's someone who's like reliant on incoming. And that's bad because we want to be able to access stored body fat for fuel. So that's the first thing, is making sure that you're eating clean proteins, most thermic macronutrient of all, healthy fats, and fiber. The protein and fiber work to slow down stomach emptying, keeping you fuller longer, and to keep your blood sugar much slower release. And then the fat tells your brain that you just had something to eat, so it's more satiating. Then the next thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is starting to spread your time. So if you were eating every 2 to 3 hours, we're going to start taking it to every 3 to 4 hours, then 4 to 6 hours, so that you're able to use stored fat for fuel. Then I start to taper down sugar. So I've deemed things as high sugar impact, medium sugar impact, and low sugar impact based on how much they raise your insulin and blood sugar, how much fructose is in it versus the nutrients and fiber in it. And I start to taper people. So if you were eating like, white bread, you would go to a gluten-free whole grain bread, to maybe you would go to a lettuce wrap, right? We take it down, down, down. We don't just go from high sugar impact to low sugar impact. We taper down over the course of a week or two. And then over a course of another couple of weeks, I like kick out all the fructose, because fructose is super sweet and makes you crave more sweet. And I really start to focus on sour, spicy, savory. What's super cool is sour takes your sweet tooth away. So that's one of the hacks I have people do, is a little lemon juice, which lowers your blood sugar response to a meal, with just the slightest bit of an allowable natural sweetener like monk fruit or allulose or stevia that does not raise blood sugar and doesn't trigger an insulin response. But what I've found is when you do this, you can, over the course of the weeks, retrain your taste buds to appreciate the natural sweetness of things like blueberries and cinnamon. And when you go to eat those foods you used to eat, they just taste too sweet and really gross, right? But we've got to, it's sort of like you went to a rock concert, you came out and everything was like loud, and then you got used to it. And now, people have to yell at you for you to hear. It's sort of, you got to retrain your taste buds again.
Yeah, no, I think that is so true. And I think it's one of the biggest secrets until someone figures it out and actually experiences it and gives up sugar, cuts it out, and does these things that you're talking about. It's hard to really believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
I know there's so many people are like, I can't go without, eating for a few hours. I can't go without having dessert every day. And I can't, well, you can.
Yeah, you can, but it's not going to be overnight. Like if that's the way you've been. And, I think of like being raised the way I was raised. I didn't switch overnight. It didn't quit cold turkey. If you want to go cold turkey, I think you need to go into a rehab place, because it's that hard, right? But it's just a couple of weeks and you can completely shift. But the big thing is, don't go cold turkey. Taper, right? Taper and transition to do it.
Yeah. And it is amazing how your taste buds change and your desire for sweets just goes away. And it's such a relief to be in charge of that. But then you have to stay on it, because then what people will do will be like, oh, that was great. And then it just starts coming back in. Right. And I have to say, JJ, you are one of the strictest people I know when it comes to sugar. And I've been around you socially and at your conferences and stuff. And people, she really does do this. And it's just like,
but I'll eat things here and then. I just don't eat like, I'm pretty, here's the thing. I've connected the dots between what I eat and how I feel. And I know, sadly, that if I eat gluten, my fingers are swollen and my joints hurt. And if I eat dairy, my face breaks out. So you won't see me doing things that I've connected the dots and go, that equals that. Like, it's not worth it. But, if we have a gluten-free cupcake, I'll have some of it. I probably won't eat a whole one because it's too sweet, but I'll eat a bite of it, right? In fact, we had one I found a bakery here in Tampa, this Haley Life bakery that does gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, corn-free, soy-free, peanut-free. And some of the stuff is keto, no sugar, but most of it's not. But we got a couple things and shared them, and I had a bite. Like, I'm not going to plow through it, because again, these things you're like, okay, too sweet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's true. It's when you get to the point where you just don't, like a bite is all you need. It's pretty powerful to get to that place.
Yeah.
What about some substitutes for some of the other things? Like you mentioned substitutes for sugar, but what about substitutes for gluten?
Yeah. Well, it depends which gluten you're eating. I am like, cauliflower is the greatest thing ever. Like, isn't it amazing what's happened with cauliflower? So when I wrote The Virgin Diet and was, this has been now, 15 years of pulling people off of gluten, maybe longer. And it used to be so hard to find things. And now, bless cauliflower, and I think it's called cauliflower and siete, with these things that they're making, because these siete tortillas are fantastic. We love those. And then the cauliflower power or cauliflower pasta is just amazing. And then there's lentil pastas. And then we even found a gluten-free, this is crazy, we found gluten-free sourdough bread and rolls that Dr. Ann Shippey got for us. So there's some amazing stuff out there.
Yeah.
If you want to look for it. I mean, amazing pizza crusts and lasagna noodles. And we make a lasagna with Kite Hill almond ricotta cheese and lasagna noodles. I think they're lentil lasagna noodles, and you would not know. And if you're not egg intolerant, there are also from Capello's makes these amazing almond lasagna noodles. So we've literally found the most incredible things here. So gluten, again, there's so many easy options out there and so many different flours now. I like to use things more like almond and coconut, 'cause some of the things like cassava are really high sugar impact, but a lot of easy options out there for that.
Yeah. And I noticed that you're not saying anything that has rice in it. Because it used to be when we would go gluten-free, everything was rice or corn. And it was, that was hard. So then we'd have to just go completely, go without those things.
Yeah. Because corn, obviously you don't want to do corn. And I know when we first were doing a lot of the swaps, I was like, you're sticking corn in everything. Stop that. It's got a different type of gluten, but corn's got so many issues. And rice, I just worry about too much rice with the arsenic issues. That's why that's not my favorite thing to do. Wild rice is okay. So yeah, there's so many easy options, but here's the best option. Don't eat bread. Bread's just not a great thing. Now we found a place on Etsy, believe it or not, that does einkorn, which is the non-genetically engineered gluten. They do einkorn fermented sourdough pizza crusts. And what's interesting, when you do sourdough, basically when you ferment it, you take the gluten way down, and einkorn's the non-genetically engineered wheat. So this is quite a thing. It's amazing.
Thank you for listening to the Woman's Doctor podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with the women in your life. And to learn all about balancing hormones, join us for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony docuseries at thewomansdoctor.com.